The solutions architect could be specifically product focused, or they could be more local engineering focused and still working and grappling with file formats and filters and parsers and getting things to be compatible from one platform to another. I really don't think there's a single universal definition of what a solutions architect does, and it's one of the things that, quite frankly, having been a solutions architect for this long, I don't really like the name or title solutions architect, because it leaves it wide open. I mean, what is a solution?
Hello, friends. Welcome to a new episode of Merging Minds, the podcast brought to you and powered by BureauWorks, the TMS. Today, as every day, I'm thrilled to bring you a new guest. Today, I invited a friend of mine, somebody I've known from my early days in the localization industry, somebody I've worked with in two different companies, somebody I owe a lot of money in commissions because he's been helping me get jobs all the time. And he's always asking for the percentage. I've never given him anything, but I owe you a lot, my friend. I would like to introduce you to Bill Lafferty. I don't know if you guys know him, but in case you don't, Bill, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Javi. It's great to be here. You don't owe me anything. Your friendship means everything to me. So we're all good there. So I'm Bill Lafferty, senior solutions architect. I've been in the translation industry for at least 25 years, a long time. And I have a very long career path in this industry. So I'm open to talking about that and anything else you want to talk about today.
I love it, Bill. Thanks for being here. You're one of the most knowledgeable people I know in the industry. You have perspectives on the use of technology, on management of programs, on leadership, on sales, and in many things. And I'm glad you came here to share some of your insights with us. Right? You are from the United States of America. I know for a fact that you've also been living in Japan. You've had several roles in the last years. You went from founding a company to working in another company on the LSP side. And now there's something else coming up on the client side, etc., etc., etc. You've had an amazing career. So let's go back to the beginning. And I always try to ask the guest, okay, you've been here for several years. How on earth did you find this industry?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. So when I was in college, I took advantage of a study abroad program to go to Japan. I was just very interested in the Japanese language. I took some courses in undergrad and immediately fell in love with kanji and the writing system. Remember making many hundreds of flashcards to try to remember each of the kanji and how to pronounce it and how the meaning changes when you conjugate it or combine it with other characters. And I had this feeling like I could go to Japan for a couple of semesters and learn Japanese, which was supremely flawed logic, because I went for 2 semesters oh man, it's gonna take a lot longer to really get this language down. And that was actually in 1993. So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And what that led to was a number of things that kind of kept me in country in Japan for a while. So firstly, at that time, I graduated college. The economy in the US was not good at all. And there was an opportunity to teach English in Japan. I applied and I got it. So I was actually placed in a fishing village in the southern part of Honshu to teach English at a high school. And I was so excited about this because I was able to live and work in Japan while continuing to study Japanese. And that led to actually staying there for 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you made a life there. And what's your background? Are you did you stumble upon the localization industry? Because I know you're a very tech-oriented professional, but did you study translations? Did you study something related to computer technologies? What is your background?
Right. So
Let's go even behind that.
Even before Japan. So I was like a wanderer in college. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to study. And
All right.
yeah, my wife and my kids always rib me about this, but I changed my major 3 times. I started as a business major, and then I switched to English, and then I switched to Japanese after that. So I guess I've always been interested just in language. And when I
Okay.
hit on Japanese, that's when I kind of felt like I'd hit home and something that really meant something to me. So I stuck it out learning Japanese, and that was sort of the doorway that opened into uh, the localization industry because I just started translating stuff. Like when I was an exchange student, I write this on my website, but when my host father was a dentist, and he came home one day and he just had this one page fax, right? So again, the early 90s, right? So fax machines were still used all the time. He puts in front of me a one page fact that's written in Japanese. And he said he wanted me to translate it into English for one of his colleagues who was an American guy living in California. And I mean, I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have electronic dictionaries. I just a little paperback dictionary. And I tried to translate it. And I'm sure it was a horrific mess, right? Like I'm sure it was bad, but like
So that was your
um,
first organization experience,
that,
like translate
yeah,
these texts. Oh my God.
yeah. And it was about like it was very technical too. Like it was one report from a professional dentist to another, right?
All
So
right. All right. Wow.
um, yeah, should like take a match to it and burn it afterwards. But the process, the process was awesome. Like I really thoroughly enjoyed translating as one might try to solve a puzzle
All
and
right.
figuring out how things fit together. And after that point, I was even more motivated to study the language. I actually studied for what's called the Japanese National Proficiency Exam,
Okay.
and they have different levels. And I sat for level one in 1997. At the time, I was taking courses in Japanese literature in Kyoto, and I went to Kyoto University and took this 4-hour exam, and I managed to pass. From there, I decided to come back to the States, and I took a year working. I actually did project management work for a very small language service provider that's no longer around, but that was sort of the bridge to wanting to go back into the language side. And I went to I applied to the Monterey Institute to
Oh
study
yeah.
Japanese
Yeah, yeah.
translation.
You're a Monterey degree, right?
Graduate,
Graduate.
correct,
Sorry. Graduate. Yeah,
correct.
nice, nice, nice.
Part of the
So,
Monterey tribe.
and I really like your career, and I really see. I mean, and since I'm lucky to have known you for long, I know how the various roles you've played, right? Some of the guests that come here are entrepreneurs in our industries, right? They tell us the stories of how they got started. So, like, somebody's just per chance. Somebody's like, I know, I saw the niche. Somebody says, like, I had a job, I hated it. And it's like, I can do this myself. And
Mm.
I would like to ask you about several stages of your career, if that's okay. But the first
Yeah,
time,
sure.
because I know you founded a company in a difficult time, very like focused on translation on Japanese translations with a lot of things in between.
Mm.
What were the biggest difficulties? How did you get to do this? Like, tell us about that.
Right. Okay. So um, let me sort of bridge you over to when that happened because there was a little bit of time that transpired from Monterey to starting the company. So
Okay,
basically,
okay. In between, what happened? I didn't know what happened in between then.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just old, so there's a lot of history that I have to get through before we could get to that. So basically, I graduated from Monterey, and I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to work at a law firm in Japan as an in-house translator.
Okay.
And you're a lawyer too, are you? I
I'm
mean,
a
not that
lawyer.
I'm a lawyer, but
Not
like,
that I haven't used my law degree for anything, but I'm a lawyer.
I was
I'm a
just
lawyer.
gonna say, like, personality-wise, it blew me away to know that you got your JD because I couldn't see you wearing a suit and tie in an office environment every day. Anyway, that experience was tough. It was good, and I learned a ton from people around me, but especially learning like the technical approach to how to do legal translation. So I did that for a little over a year, and then while I was living in Japan, I had just gotten married, and I was living in Tokyo. And when I left, I was fortunate to make an acquaintance with a gentleman who ran his own small legal translation company. He himself was a certified attorney and been practicing for decades. And he kind of took me under his wing. So I mentored under him for 7 years, just doing nothing but legal translations. So court documentation and contracts and due diligence, testimony. Um, and it was an amazing time. And I think it was like, I think people reach the apex of their career at different times. Like it's not linear. You might reach something that you look back over time and say, that was the best part of my career, but it happened 20 years ago.
Oh,
um, I'm optimistic that I'm going to reach another peak with where I'm going next. Um, However, that was just an amazing time because I do really enjoy working for myself. And so I would just wake up and I would have tons of paperwork to grind through and translate and figure out. And I was getting so much feedback from my mentor that I felt like I was getting a little bit better every day. So, but the financial crisis made that come to a screeching halt because we had moved back, my wife and I, and at the time, my only son, who was only a couple years old, we moved back to the States because my mother was actually quite ill. And the financial crisis happened and it just changed everything. So the amount of work kind of dried up. And if you're self-employed and you tie yourself to one specific customer, then things can get tricky when that one customer can no longer really provide you with the amount of work that you need to survive.
yes.
And that was what prompted me to connect with several other people who I had gotten to know in Japan and had trusted. And together, four of us co-founded a company that was going to focus on equity research translation and legal translation, specifically from Japanese into English or English back into Japanese. So more like an SLV than an MLV.
Were you already the tech guy there, or
No,
when you
no,
started like saying, "I want to do like this is I want to find the I'm liking this part of there's some technology." Oh man, no. So when did
no.
that inspiration to become a solutions architect come?
So gradually through the, founding the company experience, I started to take an interest in cloud based tools. I started to see like the very first version of MemSource at the time came out and comparing that to like a server, a software that you download locally on your system and see the flexibility that it has and the ability to like share with multiple stakeholders. That's what really started me thinking more about technology than language production. And by that point in time, I'd been doing it for so long.
Hmm.
I was ready to pivot in a slightly different direction. So over the course, and if you're the co-founder of a company, like you get exposed to everything,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
agree.
you're right. You do a little bit of everything. So certainly handling file formats and processing them and getting them uploaded into tools in order to like do translations and Simon stuff was something that I took part in. So yeah, so it was basically just I think a natural outgrowth of my exposure to doing translation business for customers that were at the time specifically interested in the Japanese market, but like that had applicability outside of that, obviously.
And you took that interest as you go, and then you became like super well versed and super well formed on technologies at the time, right? And it's super interesting as well because since maybe you friend watching don't know him, but Bill has an extreme salesy background, which helps solutions architect or people that might be seen as back office to communicate and to have certain set of skills that are very useful to communicate with clients and to do that. And how did you develop those as well during that time in Japan? Tell me a little bit about that.
One thing that I could say, like I would not say. I mean, I appreciate your your kind words. I wouldn't say I'm the best at that at all, but like just the Japanese culture around the provision of service really moved me. Like their commitment to quality and excellence is simply unparalleled. Like the just going to have lunch in Tokyo and sitting down and looking at the care that gets put into the dishes that are made and served to you is totally next level. And I think that rubbed off on me. I mean, I went there for the first time when I was 20 years old and I spent more than a decade and just opened my eyes to what it takes to actually provide a quality service. And so that was kind of, that was definitely something that left an indelible mark in me.
Yeah,
And then on top of that, like I think you know this really well too. I mean, you worked at you worked at multiple TMSs at this point. You worked together with me at an LSP as well. You're kind of selling to everybody. Like translation is hard. Like localization is hard in every direction. That's my experience anyway. And so when you're working with linguists, and goes back to when I was working at the company that I co-founded, you're kind of negotiating and selling projects to your linguists, trying to position the assignments the best you can to get their buy-in, and you negotiate with them. And then finally you strike upon a relationship where you know you can reliably send translation work to this linguist and they're going to do work for you and be happy and send it back. And then you have to do the same with your customers and figure out, you know, what the terms of the business relationship are going to be. And if you work with a third-party technology provider, you're negotiating with them as well. What do you actually need from the platform? How much do you need from it? All of that, I think, wraps up into like a really social dimension,
Yeah.
at least within me, of like working with people. And maybe that's what you're speaking to. I don't know,
Yeah,
but I've always felt it to
that's
be
one
like
of
that.
like so you can train those. I mean, because now there's a lot of talk of everybody has to sell, and you, if you, whether you're in a position, right? So you got that liking and just train those skills, selling internally to your vendors, talking to your providers, whatever, right? And that helps you be there wherever you are. I think, but I was asking you also because I had in mind, like, when you think of somebody that is developing a role of a solutions architect, you are thinking of somebody that is behind the computer at home or in a back office and is like dealing with the computer and doing stuff, and then they might not have to require those skills,
Right.
right? And that's what I was coming from more than anything, right? And
Gotcha.
and that's what I was thinking. Like, hey, you were able to develop these skills to be able to that, and based on your experience and all of the things you've lived and you're still going to be living, would you define the solutions architect role as a back office, front office, or you gotta be flexible? How would you define it?
Yeah, man, it's such a good question. Like, how exactly should you define the solutions architect role? I think it depends on the organization that you're working in. And so I recently left Aclaro. They are a great LSP and awesome people there. And my role actually was pre-sales and post-sales and also product oriented. There's just multiple dimensions. Like, it's hard to, but I was the sole solutions architect too for a long time. The solutions architect could be in the near future specifically AI focused. The solutions architect could be specifically product focused, or they could be more local engineering focused and still working and grappling with file formats and, you know, filters and parsers and getting things to be compatible from one platform to another. I really don't think there's a single universal definition of what a solutions architect does. And it's one of the things that, quite frankly, having been a solutions architect for this long, I don't really like the name or title solutions architect because
Okay.
it leaves it wide open. And
Labels are bad normally. You're right. Labels are be like in this flexible world we live in. Yeah, labels tend to do you worse than bad than good, right?
right. I mean, what is a solution? You know,
Yes,
so it's
yes.
like the root word for the title leaves so much open that depending on like how things shape up, like I think you need to define healthy boundaries about like what you're expected to do.
So then let me rephrase that question because this
Sure.
might may make more sense. What I would think, I would like to ask you, what do you think could be the biggest misconception people have about the role of solution architect? Before maybe that explains it better, right? Or people, as I said, like they might think somebody that is behind the computer, whatever. What is it? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Right. Well, that the solutions architect actually heads down in the code might be one of the bigger misconceptions. Like, I do think where there is some common ground is that the solutions architect needs to be a very good communicator with other technical experts. So the way that I would say it is that the solutions architect is the gatekeeper for allowing very specific questions to go in the direction of web developers or software engineers or localization engineers, because you have other resources behind you. And depending on the nature of an issue that's in front of you, whether it's a question from a potential customer wondering if you can actually handle a certain type of data that they have, or whether there's an existing customer with live operations and they've encountered a challenge, then the solutions architect needs to really understand what those challenges are and then turn around and be able to communicate them effectively to the other stakeholders who are the real experts that are behind the computer screen banging away on the keyboard the way that you're describing.
Yeah. Okay. And then you've had your own business. You've worked on the vendor side. You're working on the client side since
Yep.
recently as a solutions architect in both of the last roles. Hey, tell us, for those listening out there who are solutions architects or who consider that career, what are the main differences? Like, what can one expect from being on one side and on the other?
Um,
Because I guess I'm
that's
sure the pressure is this. There's pressure on both sides, but it's different, right? So, and I'm not only talking about the pressure. I mean in general.
on the service side. The solutions architect's biggest responsibility is multitasking, I think, in my experience. And again, like you could ask others in the industry and they may have a different take, but you end up being responsible and accountable to a portfolio of customers. And so your ability to sort of like stay on top of all of those accounts and make sure things keep moving and be a good communicator cross-functionally with all the different, with ops, potentially with account management, potentially with leadership, potentially with your product team, critically important. And on the client side, all that communication is very similar, but the stakeholders are experts in their various domains, and it's more about keeping things moving and progressing towards an ideal state. Like, of course, everybody wants automation, but like automation is very hard to achieve out of the gate, regardless of what any TMS might advertise out there. Automation is going to come 6 to 9 months after you sign the dotted line. Like, it's been my experience. Just like you have to inch towards it because you have to figure out the content types, the structure of the data, like the readiness of the data, where to put it when you're done. Like, are the connectors actually up to par to handle the task? Do you need to request a new feature in order to support your use case? Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent on that piece, but counseling patients while showing progress on the client side, I think, is super important. So yeah, there definitely, there's different needs on either side.
All right. I mentioned before that everyone, I mean, you particularly have, from my understanding and my knowledge of you, very good sales skills. But also, I think lots of professionals, or all professionals now, in order to grow their career, they should, or we should train our leadership skills as well, right? Can you tell us some of those leadership skills that a solution architect should have? Or that come from top of
Yeah,
your mind? Oh,
right. Like it. So that's a super interesting question, and that goes to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, Javi. Like the definition of the solutions architect, and what are the boundaries of the solutions architect role. The solutions architect, I think, and let's save some time to talk about becoming a solutions architect too. Okay, so like let's devote a little time to that before we wrap up. In my experience, are people that have no problem rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty in tools, like actually, trying to break things, like trying to upload that weird XLIF file into a system and seeing how it displays and can you do everything with it, and working with the API of a given platform, whatever the case may be. And what, in my experience, the reason I'm saying this is the people who tend to be willing to be hands-on and learn from that experience end up having a voice that can carry the day, like operationally speaking. So you may be in a situation where on the org chart, you're really not the leader of that particular endeavor or initiative, but you're kind of the only one in the room that's logged in and done everything. And so you end up having a really important point of view. And depending on how things come out, you may end up leading your other stakeholders in the room on tasks that need to be taken care of, and the directionality of an account, be it by virtue of what the solutions architect has learned in the process of standing up a solution. So leadership will definitely be on the radar for anybody who's in a solutions architect role. And a really good organization too will recognize that and allow for flexibility for solutions architects to evolve up and into technical leadership roles and things of that nature too.
and what about communication skills? Like, because we also
Critical.
think when critical, right? Because when I think of when people might think, or students who might be looking listening to the podcast might be thinking, "Oh, solutions architect, I just want to get that job because I want to be behind the computer, and if I need to explain something, I'm just going to send emails or messages on Slack, and that's it." But
Right.
tell me
Then it's
about
not for you.
that. Is not for
Then it's
you,
not,
right?
yeah. So yeah, it's inescapably social, right? Like, but you just sort of have to have a love for technology and talking about it. And a lot of people, I think, maybe they, a student who's listening might think that they would prefer to have tasks assigned to them and that they're just heads down and they're an individual contributor to getting the task done. And that's fine, but I would say that the forward path for that type of mindset would be more towards engineering and um, maybe a little bit less towards solutioning. But I mean, people should. I frankly, I think with any GPT model out there, if you're really interested in becoming a solutions architect, I think you could do it in like 6 months or less. If you
Wow.
really, if you like technology and you want to try to take your career to the next level in the localization industry, then you could easily take a look at some of the communication, or just look at the marketing that's on some of the biggest LSPs website. What are they offering? Plug those URLs into Notebook LM and have them develop a curriculum and then go through and just start ticking off, like learning what an API is, what is an endpoint, how do you interact with it, what's a webhook, what do you get out of a webhook, when's a good idea to use a webhook, file filters, file formats, the difference between a JSON or an XML or an XLIF, and learn as you go. And if you find an opportunity to apply for a solutions architect role, just go for it. Because again, like honestly, Javi, I think the biggest thing that sets apart a solutions architect for others is really just that willingness to do the nitty gritty stuff in the tool. Just log in and do it. Like if you're willing to log in and do it and figure out how it works, then you're a budding solutions architect waiting to happen, in my opinion.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, thanks for sharing that. I just have a last question for you, Bill.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
tell us, some final thoughts, some recommendations you will give to somebody that you were saying that, hey, if you want to be a solutions architect, do this, and
Mm-hmm.
that. Like
Mm-hmm.
basically, and I'm knowing you. I know one of the things you're gonna say is be flexible and be open to anything. But I want to hear what you say.
Yeah. 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 So there's so much changing. Like we are living in an age of like tectonic shifts changing, and now is such a great time to start to dive into areas of technology that may interest you the most. Like there's one thing that I think is never going to go away, even with AI. Do you want to guess what that might be? Do you have any idea, like from a solutions architect perspective, what
The
do you think
human
is?
touch. Don't tell me more. The human point. Those things you've been talking about before. Sorry to have stopped you there.
That's okay.
Like
That's all right.
those that leadership, that being able to communicate, that part that won't go away.
For sure. That's not what I was thinking of, but but you're 100% right. You're 100% right. The human touch is not going to go away um, at all, and that is totally true. What I'm thinking of is really the plumbing. Like we have raced ahead with all these AI solutions. It's incredible now what you can do with AI agents intervening at different parts of a workflow to do editing, to do whatever. Is there something you'd like to say on that?
No, like our solution, for example. Yeah, yeah.
Indeed, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like BureauWorks is exactly what I mean. Because you guys have the ability to allow for AI to intervene in a workflow and speed up that workflow in really intelligent ways. When I say the plumbing is not going to go away, I mean how to manipulate data and get it out of one platform into another. It's a basic question that will continue to perplex people and vex people because platforms look to get all your data into one place. And you may find that, if you're in a certain type of knowledge base software that's been around for a very long time and you can only export to a CSV and the CSV contains a whole bunch of noise, the ability to actually take that and put it into an AI agent that can then look at only the important pieces of data or the relevant ones to do the task that it's been assigned, that's not ever going to go away, in my
Yeah.
opinion anyway. Or never say never, but not in the near future.
Be ready to do plumbing, be ready to have social
Be ready to
skills, be
do
ready to
plumbing.
communicate, be ready to sell everything. And you thought that solutions architect was a back office role? No, my friend.
No,
It's
not at
it's
all.
it's it's been great to have you here. Like I have never interviewed somebody that was on the solution side of our industry, and I thought of having you here to enlighten us with how is the life of a solutions architect, both for other solutions architects following the podcasting scene, and so they feel and they relate to you, and for those who want to become one. So, Bill, I'm so thankful to have had you here today, my friend. I wish you the best. I know you're starting a new adventure. We'll soon know more about that. I know we're recording in January 25. We'll see where Bill goes in the future. Thanks so much for having you here. I'm so happy and glad to count you between one of my close friends, and not only industry friends, but somebody I can call. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Bill. And
Thank
bye
you,
bye,
Javi.
everybody.
Thanks for having me. Great
Cheers.
talking to you.
Bye.